A man wanted 2 young women. Those women went to the dances, but always disappeared immediately afterwards, and he could not find where they went. After things had gone on in this way for some time, at one of the dances that man fastened a string to the dresses of one of the young women. He held the string in his hand. He followed them about, and when they started off, he still followed, holding the string. The woman discovered that he was following them. When they said to him, "What do you want?" he answered,
"I want to go with you."
And then they said, "All right," and set forward. "Near our home, there is a big hole. We are going to jump into it and you jump in with us," they said to him. When they got to the place, it was as he had been told, and they jumped down into the hole, the man still with them. Then they went on again. Before they had gone far, they came to a large cavern where there were many deer. That is where the deer came from. When the 3 got there, the old buck said to him,
"What are you doing here?"
When they asked him that, he said,
"I came because I want to marry these women." "Well, wait, and it will soon be time to go out. When that time comes, they will go out and you can have the women."
So the man waited. While he was sitting there, the time to go out came, and when they went out, he went out with them. He went out and walked around covered with a deerskin, and he chased the female deer. While he was there, the old buck said,
"You must travel around very carefully. Red feet travel about. They must be watched very closely. Soup eaters are also about, but they are not dangerous."
It was just as they had told him, and presently he was killed. Then he went back, and they dressed him up in another deerskin. The 4th time one is killed is the last, and that man then disappeared for good. This is how it has been told. When I was 11 or 12, we lived in a small house made of mud and stone, a lot like our house now. It was 2 of my brothers and I in the house. Everyone else had gone to the James feast and left us to tend to the sheep. We were getting ready for bed when we heard the dogs going crazy outside. Thinking it was nothing more than coyotes howling in the distance, we told them to be quiet. We began to drift off into sleep, and the dogs would not shut up. Somehow, I was able to go to sleep for a few hours. Then I woke up very late in the night. It was very quiet and still in the house, save for my brother's snoring and breathing. I realized I needed to use the outhouse and woke up my brother to take me there. He teased me about being scared, which I certainly was. We went out with our flashlights to the outhouse. The dogs began with their crazed barking out in the sagebrush, going from one place to the next. My brother went first, and I waited outside for him. While waiting, I tried to follow the dogs with my flashlight. Suddenly, there was a very loud whine from one of the dogs. Then, everything went quiet again. It was really too quiet for that time of year. Not even the sheep were making noise. Suddenly, I heard a few of the dogs going completely mad by the truck. When I looked over, there was this man. He was unbelievably tall, leaning one arm on the cab roof of the truck. He was looking at the dogs for a little, and then suddenly kicking one of them. They all scattered in different directions. The thing looked up at me, and I saw its face. It had a pure white face, like a full moon, 2 burning red eyes, and a slight smile that was pure black. I could not move or make a sound. It began to walk toward me with long strides, until it finally towered over me. All I began to see was a dark red, like the color of blood when you cut the throat of a sheep. I kept getting deeper and deeper into its eyes. I could faintly hear my brother coming out of the outhouse. With this, the thing looked up at him. Reality came rushing back to me. I noticed that my brother was too distracted with his buckle to realize what was going on. I also noticed this thing's long hands hovering just inches from my head. Its skin was black ash. and he smelled like a bloated dead animal in summer. I was still unable to move or speak. The Skinwalker began to move toward my brother. Finally noticing this figure, my brother became paralyzed as I was. Closer and closer it drew, reaching an arm out towards my brother's head. Something finally snapped in me, and I became unbearably angry. I broke from the trance and lunged at the Skinwalker, raising my arms like a wild animal and baring my teeth at it. A growl came out that I never knew I could make. I became angrier at the thing that was trying to hurt us. It kept that smile at first, but the angrier I got, the more the smile faded. Finally, with everything I had, I began to make this primal roar at it. It fell backwards and ran away into the night. Looking back at me, its eyes were dim and dull, its smile now long since gone. The next morning, the family returned home from the feast. After relaying the story to my parents, they quickly hired a medicine man. I encountered a dogman once a few years ago, 2013 to be exact, in the Daniel Boone National Forest in Kentucky. I was with my sister and her husband, and we were camping out for the long 4th of July weekend. We had taken Thursday and Friday off work and planned on staying there until Sunday afternoon, then driving back home. Well, that trip only lasted for 2 nights and half of the next day. The first 2 nights, everything was fine and dandy. We just did normal camping stuff. We drank beer, roasted dogs on the fire, made s'mores, and tried to creep each other out as best we could with scary stories. It was on the 3rd day, Sunday, that we witnessed something that was crap your pants scary, and we got the hell out of there. We were going for an early morning hike, since we're all early birds and love the outdoors. It was about 7:30 a.m. when we started our hike, and by the time we encountered the Dogman, it was probably around 8 o'clock or so. We were hiking up on this little rock ledge that was parallel to a stream when my brother-in-law, who was leading the hike, stopped and put his hands in the air like someone was pointing a gun at him. He turned around to face us, and you can tell he was suddenly terrified. He motioned down to the stream, which was probably about 30 feet or so below us, and we looked over. There, at the stream, was this gigantic wolf thing, and it was lapping up water just like a dog. It was on the opposite side of the stream from us, so we got a really good look at it. It was huge. Big, broad shoulders, a big old head with a shaggy brownish-black mane, the same color as the rest of the fur, but noticeably longer hair around where the mane would be. It had huge paws, but the weird thing was that they were actually grasping the rocks and debris that it stood on, so they weren't really paws at all. It also had a long muzzle, and I could have sworn I saw big canine teeth sticking out of the sides of its mouth. The sheer size of this thing was incredible. It was at least 4 feet tall on all fours. My brother-in-law mouthed,
"What the hell is that?"
to us without making a sound, and we both shrugged, as we were physically shaking from fear of the thing. I grabbed his arm and mouthed, "Let's get out of here, please." My sister grabbed his other hand and nodded in agreement. He nodded too, and we looked over at the ledge one more time to make sure this thing didn't sense or smell us. It had stopped drinking and was looking around. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid it would hear it and come after us. Luckily, it didn't hear my heart and lazily lopped back towards the forest and into the tree line. "Let's go now," my sister whispered, and the 3 of us headed back to camp with speed. When we were sure we were safe, we started jogging back and panting to each other about what we had seen. It wasn't a wolf. I know what they look like. This was something else. We got back to camp, loaded our stuff up, and left without looking back. It wasn't until a few months later that my brother-in-law told me about Dogman and showed me reports from Linda Godfrey. I was convinced from that moment on that what we encountered was a Dogman. So if you're thinking about going camping in the Daniel Boone National Forest, I'd think twice. There's something out there. It walks like a gorilla, leaves handprints like a man, rips doors off their hinges, and it likes chickens. For want of a better name, we'll call him Oklahoma's Abominable Chicken Man. It's a long story, and it goes like this. An El Reno farmer walked out to his chicken coop one day in December and found its door on the ground, apparently thrown there after being ripped off the wall. On the surface of the door, and inside the coop on the walls, were a number of strange handprints like none he'd ever seen before. They were about 7 inches long and 5 inches wide. The farmer called a state game ranger. The ranger had never seen anything like it either, and he sent the door to the Oklahoma City Zoo to see what experts could make of the prints. The experts were baffled too. Zoo director Lawrence Curtis says that the prints appear to be those of a primate. A primate is an animal like a gorilla or a man that can stand erect. The thumb of the print is unusual. Curtis says it crooks inside, as if it were deformed or had been injured.
It resembles a gorilla,
he said.
But it's more like a man. It appears that whatever made the prints was walking on all fours. There were some footprints on the ground outside,
he said. Whatever it was barefoot in December. Since Curtis got the first print and he has reports of similar finds around the state, a man in Stillwater and a woman in McAllister have told him of discovering similar prints. The woman has a photograph she is mailing to the zoo for comparison. Oklahoma has only 4 native animals big enough to leave such prints: the black bear, the mountain lion, the wolf, and man. Curtis has ruled out all but the last.
We've shown it to several mammalogists and several wildlife experts in Oklahoma, and some passing through. All agree it is a primate,
he said.
These prints were made by some sort of man, perhaps one looking for chickens.
Asked about the wide distances between the points reporting similar prints, Curtis said,
If there is one, there is more than one. There has to be more than one, unless he's hitchhiking.
There are no zoos in El Reno, no circuses, and no one is known to be keeping a gorilla. In fact, the only thing in the area that keeps primates, in this case men, is the federal reformatory just on the outskirts of town. The Abominable Chicken Man is being compared with reports of similar findings from California. In this case, people have reported seeing a 7-foot-tall man-like creature wandering in the northern wilds. They call him Bigfoot, after the large tracks he makes. The description also seems to match the Sasquatch, also known as Bigfoot, a towering primate reported in Washington and British Columbia. Curtis is trying to find a book and a magazine article that tell about the Bigfoot sightings. He's anxious to make a comparison. In the meantime, he has the chicken coop door in his office for reference, and one supposes, for conversation. There's not much else to go on until somebody reports actually seeing the Abominable Chicken Man. There are a lot of people looking. I've always been a bit of a skeptic, ever since I was a kid. Scary stories don't faze me, horror games never frighten me, and whenever I hear something weird at night, I instantly assume it's something normal, an animal or just the house settling. Despite this, something very unsettling happened to me the other day, and I'm really not sure what to make of it. I think it's the first time in years I've been genuinely frightened. I live in a forested area in the US. Me and my girlfriend live in a large cabin, and although there are roads nearby, our neighbors are at least a kilometer away. We also have 2 cats, one of which sleeps in the bedroom with us, whilst the other often goes out at night and does whatever cats do when they're out of sight. Anyway, I like to stay up late at night and sleep late into the morning, whereas my girlfriend is an early bird. It was about 1 in the morning, and I was watching crappy TV in the living room whilst my girlfriend slept in the bedroom. I was beginning to grow tired when I heard something outside, near the cat flap. For clarity, our cat flap uses an electronic chip, so only our cats can use it. I assumed it was just one of the cats coming into or leaving the house, and I ignored it. Then I heard it again. It sounded like something thudding against the flap. It happened several times at random intervals, until I lost my patience and decided to just go and open the door. Clearly, the cat was having trouble getting in. I never thought about it at the time, but this was weird because we feed our cats well, and they're very lean rather than chubby. I passed the bedroom and peered in as I walked past, to see if my girlfriend heard the noises. She was fast asleep, but the cat that sleeps with us was staring at the window. I called her name. Nothing. She kept staring. I shrugged it off and kept heading towards the kitchen. The back doors are through there, by the way. Anyway, so I reached the back door and saw a dark shape through the translucent flap. I sighed, expecting the cat to be out there, and opened the door. It took me a moment to open the door, and I saw the cat tense up as I opened the door. The door opened fully. I froze. It wasn't my cat. Whatever it was had started moving before I opened up, and I only caught a glimpse of a distorted figure, kind of like a tailless dog, bolting, and I mean absolutely pelting it. I freaked out and slammed the door shut. What the hell was it? I wasn't sure. My natural skepticism kicked in, and I assumed it was just my other cat, and I had merely startled it. Perhaps the darkness had made it appear larger. Nevertheless, I was creeped out and decided to go to sleep. As I slipped into bed, I realized something horrifying. The second cat was asleep on the rug. It took a while to get to sleep that night. Everything seemed normal until a few hours later. I awoke to a strange feeling of dread. Something wasn't right. My girlfriend was fast asleep. I held my breath and heard something creaking by the door. It sounded too loud to be one of the cats. It was if a person was walking about. I reached towards my bedside cabinet and flicked on the lamp. The room was illuminated, and I saw something standing just outside the open door, staring at me. The same twisted figure I had spotted outside earlier. It wasn't very tall, maybe a little over 5 feet, but it was its face that scared me the most. I only caught a glimpse of it, but what I saw will stay with me forever. It looked like a dog, but with an elongated face and almost human-like eyes. You know that weird distorted snarl hounds pull when they're pissed off? It had that expression. I instantly started yelling profanities as I scrambled backwards, trying to straighten up. The creature turned and sprinted down the hall. I heard it dash outside and go past the window behind us, just above the headboard. I managed to look out as my girlfriend started to panic as she woke up fully. We both caught a glimpse of whatever the hell this thing was as it dashed off into the woods near our home. Grabbing my trusty shotgun from beneath the bed, as well as a couple rounds from the ammunition box that sits next to it, I ran out of the room in my underwear and rounded into the kitchen. The door was open. I'd forgotten to lock it when I saw the thing originally. I haven't seen it since, and we still live in our cabin, but I bought sturdy locks for all the main doors and windows in the house, and always check the exit points at night. I also go to bed a bit earlier than I used to, so I'm asleep when the freaks of the night start to wake up. I've read a bunch of forums, and the only thing I can compare it to, based on what I saw, is a skinwalker. If you know anything about these things, please let me know. I'm fairly certain I may have seen a cryptid in Wisconsin. Very wolf-like, and it definitely was not a bear. As well as I'm pretty sure wolves don't run upright. So, I was 16 or 17. It was midsummer. We were at our cabin in Wisconsin. I was with my cousin and grandparents for the weekend. I brought my airsoft gear. So me and my cousin are in mid-airsoft battle, and I took it more seriously than him. I was decked out in full BDU woodland camo, including the shigma. I retreated into the forest for better tactical advantage. So, the way our land was set up is there is a trail that cuts around the border of the almost acre of owned forest. Our skirmish took us about 200 meters into the woods, going up the right trail. So, I'm a huge outdoorsman. I was introduced to hunting and survival training as well as firearms at a young age. I also had been practicing MMA for a few years at that point. The point is, I'm not really easily scared, and I'm comfortable in the wild. Now I'm 25, and I have even more training. I respect the wild a lot more now. I was cocky back then. Anyway, here's where things get strange. Our battle had ended and we were standing at the edge of a slightly clearer area of the forest, just talking. On the other side of the clearing is a hill that goes down to a small pond. Animals are a common sight around there, and it's a watering hole. Now, as any experienced outdoorsman will know, most small animals will go about their business even when humans are around. Birds will still chirp and whatnot. But when a big predator is around, the forest goes dead quiet. So me and my cousin are talking, and I decided to freak him out. So I shushed him and whispered, "We're being watched." He got quiet. Then I realized that it was dead quiet. Not even birds chirping anymore. Then I got that feeling. You know when you feel like you're being watched? When you feel it, you are. I went into hunter mode at this point and started scanning the clearing. I went from right to left and then back. On the second look through, I saw it. Its teeth are what gave it away, as they contrasted with the background. Once I focused on it, I noticed a canine appearance in the head. It had dark reddish-brown hair fur. Where it gets even stranger is it was leaning on a tree, and it had its front left arm gripping the tree. It appeared to have claws, and it was panting and staring in our direction with its ears up listening, while kneeling or crouching. I recognized it as a threat, as a predator, immediately. Now this all happened in the span of maybe 10 seconds before I said to my cousin, "We have to go." And he was a faster runner than me. When I said that, I was still watching the animal. My cousin took off when he ran. The animal raised up and ran towards us and took a good 3 steps on 2 legs, before I started to run. As I was turning to run, it appeared to be possibly going to all 4s. I got to the fork in the trail to find my cousin waiting. I yelled, "Go, go, go, go!" And we ran back to the cabin. While running out, I could hear it crashing through the woods behind me, but it didn't follow beyond the tree line. At the time, I thought it had the intention to do harm, but now that I look back on it, I think it was just being either territorial or it was a bluff charge, because most animals can easily outrun humans on foot. If it really wanted one of us, it would have gotten us. I have tried to explain it away as being a bear or a big wolf, but what I saw just does not add up to being a known animal. I'm still stumped by it. I was recently added to a group of people who have had similar sightings. They say mine falls in line with other sightings. They believe it to be a Dogman, which I think is the cheesiest name they could have chosen. But I admit that what I saw is very similar, if not the same, as what others have claimed to see. I have different theories regarding the creature, though. I am normally very skeptical. However, I know what I saw was not normal, and I am less skeptical than I used to be now. I wrote up this encounter before. In the past write-up, I was unclear with some details. I am still nervous about the forests. I don't go into the woods alone or unarmed anymore. I'm not scared of any man, but I certainly don't want to see anything that looks like a werewolf again. By the way, all of this happened in broad daylight, if it wasn't clear. Maybe there's nothing more to the legend than the typical scenario of whistling sounds and fidgety trees. Maybe Brown Springs got its spooky reputation from nothing more than the bad luck of getting a dumped body or two. Maybe the scattered and broken graves at the top of the hill don't produce ghosts from the past. And maybe the thick feeling that someone is watching you is nothing more than that, a feeling. But there is a reason Wayne Eads hasn't been back to Brown Springs in 23 years. He remembers too well the afternoon in 1976, when he, his wife, and brother-in-law wandered down the lonely dirt road off Interstate 35 and parked at the bottom of the hill. Just for fun, they followed a faded trail that led to a barbed wire fence. The farther they walked, the darker it got. First they noticed the toppled grave markers, then the bones. That was enough to send them running, but on the way down, the previously clear path was filled with stickers and Eads paid dearly with his bare feet. Then, they couldn't find the car. Somehow, Eads insists it had been moved.
It was crazy. We were scared to death trying to get out of there. That place is haunted,
says Eads, a tire plant worker from Lone Grove.
It's got a feeling up there. It just feels thick, like eyes are upon you or something.
Toy Bone recalls the time some boys took her and a girlfriend up there to scare them. When they saw the knife stabbed into the tree, with fresh blood dripping, Bone thought, there's the first prop. But when she saw the boys' faces, she knew it wasn't their idea. They all ran. Most Love County residents know about Brown Springs, whether they believe it is haunted or not. Stories circulate from generation to generation about an evil family who resided there, about small animal sacrifices, and the restless souls of criminals shot dead by Texas Rangers aiming across the Red River. Research is even being done on a possible Bigfoot sighting in the area. The unmarked spot is on the north side of the Red River, about a mile east of I-35, off Exit 1. It is owned, according to the Love County Assessor records, by Leaper Lake Incorporated, a private Texas corporation that owns Leaper Lake, just across the border. Brown Springs isn't easy to find. Locals will point to a concrete road that turns to dirt and cuts through a heavily wooded area this side of Texas. Venturers must look for two pipes coming out of the hillside that spew water. Brown Springs is a rugged and uncertain climb up that hill. At the top is an old cemetery. Historical records list 26 people as buried there. Most of them died in the late 1800s. At least 4 died as infants. 4 others died before their 5th birthday. All but 10 were younger than 25 when they died. Only about a dozen of the grave markers are visible now, and most have been broken or moved. One marker was simply a tree split in half, with letters carved in the smooth side. A former Love County prosecutor and Oklahoma Appeals Court judge, Kenneth D. Bacon, wrote about discovering that marker in his book, Red River Prosecutor.
Just as I crossed the fence, I watched that old grave marker teeter and fall over.
Bacon wrote.
It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up thinking that that marker had weathered all those winters and summers, and I was looking at it the very instant it fell over. I propped it back up before I left.
On a recent trip to the gravesite, Ardmore resident Butch Bridges photographed one child's headstone. It read, "'Tis a little grave, but oh, have care, for worldwide hopes are buried there. How much of light, how much of joy is buried in a darling boy." Bridges is known for being a level-headed fellow who, through his website, This and That, has been a reliable and entertaining source on southern Oklahoma since 1997. But what he saw when he scanned the photo of the child's grave into his computer has spooked him and some of his readers to no small degree. In the upper left corner of the photo is a shadowy image of a child's face. It seems, to some, that she is poking her head out of the ground.
It's just like you see on TV,
Bridges said.
It blows my mind.
Others claim to see the child's face and more. So intrigued are Bridges' readers that he has agreed to conduct 2 tours on the site this weekend. Daytime hours only.
I just felt like something was wanting me to come back down there, and that was before I saw the photograph.
Bridges said.
I'm not a far-out person. In fact, I'm not scared of anything. But this kind of scares me. I'll tell you, it's eerie.
So are some of the myths surrounding Brown Springs. One story told by a Hilton resident describes an evil clan that resided there, who robbed and killed travelers. The clan also imprisoned and raped women. One potential victim escaped, and her family, upon learning of the misdeeds, returned and killed the clan's patriarch. They then staked the body to the ground and sliced it open so the man-dog of the area could have a good meal without working for it. The next morning, the soft organs were missing and his entrails were scattered. Or so the story goes. Another old tale claims that Texas Rangers would wait on the other side of the Red River for criminals to come to Brown Springs for water. Then they'd shoot them. The bodies were buried on the spot. Brown Springs was once a haven for gamblers and a frequent parking spot for lovers. In 1988, a woman's car was found partially submerged in the pond directly south of Brown Springs. 2 men on a murder spree had slit her throat and killed 4 others. Love County Sheriff Wesley Liddell admits a few bodies have been found in the vicinity over the years, but he doesn't buy this haunted business.
The trees grow over the road, and people use their imagination. You know what I mean? To me, it's not creepy. I love it down there.
There are plenty of folks who would love to get to the bottom of the Brown Springs legend. One, who identified himself as a semi-professional cryptozoologist, said he is part of a team researching evidence of a Bigfoot-type creature that resided there. Like any mystery, one good story builds on another. Seems the only sure thing about Brown Springs is the fact that it has a place in Love County lore, and with human curiosity as it is, the lore will probably outlast the graves.